You're listening to the micro version of the Savage Lovecast, www.savagelovecast.com.
If you're stuck in a relationship quandary, or if you're looking for sexual harmony, well, there's nothing you can't ask on the Savage Lovecast.
So I'd never heard of Lee Chatfield until a couple of days ago. He is a Michigan GOP state representative. He is a Republican. He's part of the Republican majority that controls Michigan's legislature, that is running the place, running Michigan into the ground. That's what Republicans do. They don't think government works. So when they get in charge of government, they do all they can to prove it doesn't work by throwing monkey wrenches in wherever they can. And like almost all dick-having and not dick-having Republican elected officials in state legislatures, Lee Chatfield is an anti-choice, anti-abortion extremist. Right now, he's trying to push through the Michigan state legislature a bill that would criminalize procedure used in almost all second trimester abortions, that then would leave other options for women who needed abortions in their second trimester that were a lot more dangerous for the woman, that would imperil the woman's health. Just another anti-choice Republican elected official asshole. What brought him to my attention and what made the news is his wife, Stephanie Chatfield, came out last week in a long Facebook post about the fact that when she was a teenager, she had an abortion herself, that she chose to have an abortion. After allegedly passing out somewhere at a party and being raped and then finding out 3 weeks later she was pregnant, she didn't tell anyone. She didn't tell her boyfriend at the time, her on-again, off-again boyfriend at the time, a guy named Lee Chatfield, that she would later marry. She didn't tell her parents, all by herself. She went in the first trimester and had an abortion, chose to have an abortion. And she came forward to talk about this because someone was threatening to out her. Somebody knew that she had had an abortion when she was a teenager, and her husband is running for re-election, and somebody was threatening to out her. Now, here's how I feel about outing. When it comes to gay shit, I've talked about it a lot, but I think this applies in all cases. Outing is a brutal tactic that should be reserved for brutes. And I don't think the families of elected officials are necessarily fair game. Whoever was threatening to out Stephanie Chatfield about the abortion that she had, alone and desperate and without much support when she was a teenager, shouldn't have gone there, shouldn't have done that. So I don't think it was fair that this was done to Stephanie Chatfield because she happens to be married to an asshole who would like to deprive other women of the choice that she was free to make when she was a teenager. But now that her story is out there, now that she's talking about her story, I think it's fair game for the rest of us to talk about it and comment on it. She wrote in her Facebook post, "Your desire," addressing the person threatening to out her, "to see this story go public emboldened me to do something I should have done years ago. And no matter the intentions of anybody wishing to see this story go public, this I am certain of, God meant it for good and will glorify himself through this experience, through her choice, through being outed for it." And here's the takeaway for Mrs. Chatfield, for Stephanie, about the abortion that she had. "I was ashamed and I was scared, and this was the worst decision of my life. To tell you the truth, I desperately wish that I had the courage as a teenage girl to accept and welcome my child into this world, but I didn't, and I made a decision that I've thought about and regretted nearly every day since. It's haunted me. I knew what I did was wrong at the time, but I never imagined the weight and the guilt that I would carry as a consequence." And now, Stephanie Chatfield, by dint of her personal experience, she supports her husband's efforts and the efforts of other Republicans to make abortion illegal, to deprive other women and girls of the choice that she made because she regrets the choice that she made. This is a leap that people who had the opposite experience don't make. What Stephanie Chatfield is saying is, I regret my abortion, therefore you shouldn't be allowed to have one. You never hear people who've had abortion say, because I don't regret my abortion, you should be required to have one. Or the choice that I made that was right for me must be right for you and right for all because it was right for me. You don't see people on the other side make that logical leap. I have regrets, therefore you shouldn't be allowed to make this choice. I don't have regrets, therefore what? ... Therefore nothing. Make your own choice is the argument people on the pro-choice side make. And the fact is that the overwhelming majority of women who've had abortions do not regret their decision. You can go to plos.org and you can read Decision Rightness and Emotional Responses to Abortion in the United States, a longitudinal study. And this study tracked 667 women who'd had abortions at 30 facilities all across the United States of all ages and races, and had abortions for all sorts of different reasons. And what it found was that 95% of all respondents, quote, reported that having the abortion was the right decision for them. I understand there are people out there who regret having had an abortion. I don't want to see anyone have, as a pro-choice person, I don't want to see anyone have an abortion that they regret. I don't want to see people having abortions because they don't feel like they have any other choice, or because they feel alone or scared, or they can't reach out, or they fear being sex shamed or dumped or judged. That's not a free choice. But to make the leap from I made the wrong choice, or the wrong choice for me, to I support my husband's efforts to deprive others of their own choices, of their own free will, of their own capacity to make their own decisions and make their own choices, and then live with the consequences of their own choices and their own decisions. That I can't support. That looks like attempting to make yourself right with God by punishing others, or depriving others of the choice that was right for you at the time that you made it, perhaps, and that you feel guilty or conflicted about now that you happen to be married to an anti-choice extremist. In the best of all possible worlds, no one would get an abortion that they regretted. In the best of all possible worlds, no one would ever make any choice that they lived to regret. We should all live in that kind of utopia. And in the best of all possible worlds, young women who've been assaulted, or young women who found themselves inconveniently pregnant for some other reason, would be able to reach out to their families and to their on-again, off-again boyfriends and get their support and be able to hash that out and then make their own choice. That didn't happen for Stephanie Chatfield. And I'm against people depriving others of their ability to make their own choices. I'm against whoever it was that forced Stephanie Chatfield to come out about the abortion that she had, depriving her of her right to choose to keep that private thing private. And I'm also against her husband's efforts to deprive other women in Michigan, and if she should ever make it onto the national stage, women all across the country, of their right to make their own choices as well, including the right to choose to terminate a pregnancy. Now, after this, your calls. This episode of the Savage Lovecast is brought to you by adamandeve.com. Get 50% off almost any item, plus 3 free adult DVDs and free shipping. Just go to adamandeve.com and enter Savage at checkout. This episode of the Savage Lovecast is brought to you by Club W, the wine club that sends wine to your door. Get $20 off your first order of 4 bottles or more by going to clubw.com/savage. This episode of the Lovecast is brought to you by Stamps.com. Buy and print official U.S. postage using your own computer and your own printer. For a special offer, which includes a digital scale and up to $55 worth of free postage, go to Stamps.com and enter SAVAGE.
Hi, Dan and the tech-savvy at-risk youth. I am an early 30s mom who has been with my husband for almost 14 years. Within the first 4 to 5 years of our dating, we started getting more adventurous, so we went into some threesomes with girls, which escalated to foursomes with couples, which eventually escalated into cuckolding, where I would go out and fuck guys, one of his friends included in that, record it, and come home and do whatever with him. I have a very low sex drive, and he has an incredibly high sex drive. So we have a ongoing compromise where we will do it every other day to keep him happy and not so cranky, and so that I don't feel like I have to do it all the time when I don't want to. The nights that we aren't doing it, he is usually masturbating once I go to bed, which is fine, awesome. Do that more. That's totally cool. On nights where it is time to do it, and I'm not particularly interested, sometimes we will do something that we call sleep sex, where I'm essentially falling asleep while he fucks me, and then when he's done, I will get up and pee and go right back to sleep. He is incredibly adventurous, so while I am not into those things, I will do things like water sports or scat play to be a GGG lady. That stuff's fine. He understands I'm not always into it. But I kind of want to know, is this compromise of choosing to do it when I don't want to do it smart? Is it healthy? I mean, it's obviously okay for our relationship because it keeps him happy. I get a little resentful sometimes, but I wish he was a little more okay with not doing it so frequently. I guess I just want to know. I'm trying to be GGG. I've been super GGG, and I just want to know if I'm being smart and healthy and doing the right thing, I guess.
There's being GGG, and then there's being a fully staffed up Thai brothel. And it sounds like you're more the latter, and like you've been bullied into it. You don't sound particularly traumatized by all of the potentially traumatizing things that you've been asked to do and sort of kind of consented to do. But what your husband is asking of you is way above and beyond, far above and beyond the call of mere GGG-ness. When I rolled out the concept of GGG, I also rolled out the concept of AFTF, which is a fetish too far. And I want to add a couple of other Fs to it for you. A fucking fetish too fucking far. Shitting, scat, that is a fetish too far. That is not something that someone who also isn't into scat is, I don't want to say required, because GGG actually doesn't require you to do anything. It just encourages you to be thoughtful and indulgent and considerate, and not to rule out, not to just throw down a no because you've never thought about it before, and maybe to go somewhere with your partner, to indulge them, to give them pleasure, and see if that doesn't also redound to you and give you pleasure, as Amy Muse has proven in her papers and her research that it does. But fucking you while you fall asleep, fucking you every other day and calling that not a lot of sex, that's a lot of sex every other day, particularly in a long-term committed relationship. That's a whole fuck of a lot of sex. If he needs this much sex and this much bananas off the wall, turn on the chest sex, you should, if you can, encourage him to find other sex partners who can milk him at the rate that he needs to be milked. Listen to the tone of my voice. I sound more upset and more traumatized by what you're going through than you do. So I don't want to, read myself into your situation, project myself into your circumstances, and then tell you that you have to feel about it the exact same way I would feel about it. But if I were in your circumstances, I would be insanely and deeply resentful and fucking exhausted. And I would start ruling shit out. Starting with shit, I would rule shit out. No more shit. Shit is for somebody who's into shit. Shit isn't for somebody who's a shit non-combatant, who's a shit civilian. No shit for them. No shit for you. And your husband has to get a therapist, not to stigmatize or shame him for a high sex drive. It's a fine thing to have a high sex drive. There are people out there who do need to drain it every day, and they're not all men either. But to insist on a degree, a level, a rate of sex and a bouquet, a children's treasury of sex acts at the rate that he has is just unfair to you. You have done all of the compromising in this relationship sexually, and that is not okay. That is not fair. You can rule things off the list. You can say no to this, no to that, and still have a GGG card in your wallet that nobody can take from you. Because GGG doesn't mean do anything ever that the other person requests or demands or needs. GGG just means be open to and thoughtful about, and maybe default to yes, but you can still play a no. You can still throw the no card. You can still say no. And fucking me while I fall asleep, unless that's something that you enjoy too. That's probably a no. Shit and piss, probably a no. Definitely a no with the shit. And you know what? I think that you knew I was going to say all this. I think you called in hoping that I would give you permission to say no to some of this and to dial this stuff back without having to view yourself as an inadequate sex partner or not GGG or not loving of this man and his insane demands. And I worry about that because you called in knowing that this is too much, knowing there's too much on your plate and everywhere else, knowing that you want less. And you want to feel entitled to ask for less and to give less. But you needed me to tell you to do that. So you're in a relationship right now with a man where you do whatever he tells you to do. And you've turned now to a man, a dumb faggot with a call and sex advice podcast, so that I would tell you what to do. And I think what you need to do is what's right for you. And I think what I'm telling you to do is right for you, but you need to start looking inside and giving yourself permission to act in your own self-interest without some asshole with a dick telling you to do this or do that, or to say no to this or to say no to that. Don't replace your husband's demands with my orders. Although I think you might want to err on the side of my orders, because I think I'm just ordering you to do what you want to do. And I'm telling you what you wanted to hear when you called, and I'm happy to. But just like he needs to get a therapist, not to shame him about a high sex drive, that's a fine thing to have, but to shame him potentially about the way in which he's treating you like a blow-up Thai brothel, you need to maybe see a therapist to learn how to listen to the voices in your head, to that little still voice inside you that is saying, yeah, marrying someone doesn't obligate you to let that person take a dump on you or to take a dump on that person, except figuratively, because when you're married to somebody for a long time, you kind of do take dumps on each other every once in a while, but not literal ones, unless that person is into that, which almost all people are not, and you are not. So, get a therapist. Both of you, get a good sex-positive therapist that can help him find ways to channel his insane sexual energies in directions that don't always pull you along and don't create obligations for you, and create also for you some passes. You get to pass. You get to say, no. I invented GGG. I thought of GGG. I have said no to things that I have been asked to do by my husband, not by some rando on a bus, although I've done that too. I've said no to them. You can say no in the context of a loving, committed, long-term, sexually off-the-hook, fun relationship and still be GGG. I have, and I am. Just like us here at the Lovecast, Adam and Eve want you to have a fun, healthy sex life, and they are very set up to help you get there. They are now offering 50% off almost any item. Choose a new adult toy, lube, or almost anything from over 18,000 adult products. Plus, Adam and Eve will let you pick 3 free adult DVDs with your order. Choose from all kinds of genres for both gay and straight folks. And you'll receive a free mystery gift. What could it be? And free shipping. That's adamandeve.com and enter Savage at checkout.
Hey, Dan. I'm a 23-year-old gay man in a monogamous relationship. I've been in my relationship for a little more than 4 years. We got together in college. He's only my second sexual partner ever, and I was his first and only. Our sex life is generally pretty great, but I've recently been getting frustrated at how limiting it is in some aspects. He mostly tops and I bottom, and it's tough to get him to go down on me or rim me, and he also won't let me top him because he doesn't find it pleasurable at all. We have tried. I also have a higher sex drive than he does generally, and we work kind of different schedules. So I frequently find that my only real option is my hand. I really love him, and I really love being with him, but recently I've been mulling the idea of asking him if we could open up our relationship to outside sexual experiences. So I did, and the idea made him really uncomfortable, really nervous, really anxious. He and I are both longtime Lovecast listeners, and I talked through it with him, communicating a lot of the advice that I've heard you give other people, but he just could not seem to get past the idea that, one, I'm going to fall in love with someone else, or two, that I'm going to contract some kind of STI or HIV. He kept saying he didn't know if he would be able to have sex with me while I'm having sex with other people because he would be too worried about that happening. I assured him that if our relationship was open, that I would go on PrEP and practice safe sex, and I also told him that it hurt my feelings for him to say that a little bit because I think it insinuates that I don't care about my personal health enough to protect myself, but anyway, I love this guy. We live together. We've made a life together, and I'm not interested in leaving. We've even discussed getting married, but I really need to find a way that we can reasonably compromise on this because I'm not totally sexually satisfied.
It might help if you went to your boyfriend and acknowledged that his fears are not entirely irrational, nor is it insulting of you or your character or your intentions for him to raise them. You could fall in love with someone else. If you were fucking around with somebody else on the regular, you could catch feelings for that person. Now, people who are not fucking around with anyone else, that also can happen to them. They can catch feelings for someone that they work with or someone that they regularly run into at a coffee shop or whatever. People in closed relationships sometimes fall in love with other people. You could also contract an STI, even if you were on PrEP, even if you were practicing safe sex, even if you were doing everything quote unquote right. There are certain sexually transmitted infections that all the PrEP and all the condoms in the world, unless it's a full body latex suit condom, aren't going to protect you from. You could contract HPV. You could contract herpes. You could contract syphilis, potentially. Any of the skin to skins you could contract. So for you to be in an open relationship with this dude, he has to be comfortable with assuming a slightly elevated level of risk for STIs, as do you. You just have to be rational about that. And people who are in open relationships sometimes get really head up when I say this, even though I'm in an open relationship, they get really head up when people suggest that perhaps people in open relationships are assuming a greater degree of risk for STIs. But it's just a fact. Of course, there are studies that show that people in open relationships, honest open relationships, are at no greater risk for contracting an STI than people in closed relationships. So a lot of people in closed relationships actually aren't in closed relationships. They just think they are. And if you're cheating and you think you might have gotten an STI, you might brave that out and not say anything and not start using condoms with your partner while you work out that gonorrhea problem because you don't want your partner to wonder why you're suddenly using condoms with them and then you expose them. I think that's why a lot of people in closed relationships are at high risk. It's when they get cheated on and the cheater can't level with them. Of course, in an open relationship, if you are fucking somebody else and you contract an STI, you can say so and you can protect your partner, which then mitigates for those elevated risks. But circling back to you and your question and your problem, the issues that your partner raised, the fears that he raised about how this could impact him personally, impact his health, impact your relationship, not irrational, not an insult. I sense your frustration. Your sexual needs are not being met in this relationship. You've proposed a solution. Open the relationship and you'll be content with his limited sexual repertoire. He has countered with no. You are at an impasse. One of you is going to have to call the other's bluff. You're 23 years old. You've been with this guy since you were 19 years old. You've had 4 years. You've put up with, or you've enjoyed, or you've indulged him for 4 years. 4 years of his very limited sexual repertoire, and you are no longer willing to settle for this. So, are you prepared to go to him and say, we open it up, we deal with your fears, which are not irrational, Dan Savage told me, and we try to mitigate, and we try to accommodate, and I will be considerate, but we either open it up, or I'm out, or it's over. Because feeling sexually unfulfilled is not something that I'm prepared to do for 60 more years with you. So either we open it up or you open up and you expand your sexual repertoire and you push yourself outside your comfort zones sexually, or you're going to have to push yourself outside your comfort zones relationally by allowing me to have sex with other people, by being in an open relationship. Pick your poison. And then let him pick. And he might pick break up. This could be the end. And that might be for the best. Rieslings, rosés, and of course, champagne. Those are my favorite kind of wines. But if you don't yet know the kinds of wines you like best, you should try Club W. Club W is an online wine club that gives you wine recommendations based on what you like to eat and drink. Club W then matches you to wine that you're going to love because it's tailored to your unique tastes. They offer a 100% satisfaction guarantee on every single bottle. Start drinking personalized wine selections today. Right now, Club W is also offering my listeners $20 off your first order when you go to clubw.com/savage. And Club W will actually pay for your shipping on orders of 4 bottles or more. Just go to clubw.com/savage to get $20 off your first order now. Again, that's clubw.com/savage.
Hi, Dan. One of my wife's closest friends is a gay man in his early 40s, and he's been seeing a man for about 10 months. At first, their relationship seemed to be working out okay. The new boyfriend is charming and well-spoken, and he claimed to be a doctor, and most of their relationship revolves around smoking pot and playing video games. Fast forward to a few weeks ago, and the boyfriend has an incredible story about how he has been offered an incredible unbelievable job, and soon he will be a top diplomat meeting with world leaders. He claims the job to be top secret and that his position hasn't been announced, so that's why we don't know about it. Of course, I thought, why is he talking about it at a birthday party in a public place? The new job is supposed to be high security, and our friend will need to quit his old job and move into a new apartment due to security concerns. Secondly, they will need to get married right away for the purposes of meeting high officials and politicians. The international organization will supposedly create a new job for our friend, letting him do whatever he wants. Of course, after hearing this, we did a little searching, and we know people at the hospital the boyfriend claims to work at. And of course, there is no doctor there under his name. We did some Googling, and he has no academic records whatsoever, no paper trail, no website, no professional or social media profiles, which is not normal for a doctor or an academic or a diplomat. We happen to know another person who has worked at this international organization, and they said this would not be standard protocol. They would not require marriage, quitting a job for security reasons, and creating a job for a spouse is strictly against their rules. My wife did do some searching, and what records the boyfriend does have is a string of lawsuits. We have since learned that our friend has not met the new boyfriend's child or has ever been to his house or even seen the fancy car he claims to own. So the question is, we are convinced our friend is being conned, and the boyfriend is a liar and perhaps some kind of con artist. But dealing with this is so far out of our experience, we have no idea what to do. Anytime some doubt is raised, the new boyfriend has some clever answer, and our friend trusts him again. Our friend is really in love and is convinced this is the real deal, and he is convinced that a new and exciting life is right around the corner. I'm afraid that love and smoking dope has clouded his judgment. We are afraid that he will be getting into some kind of serious financial trouble or even worse. How do we tell him his boyfriend is a fraud?
Yeah, who's going to break it to this guy that his boyfriend isn't Dr. Jason Bourne? It's going to have to be you. You have options these days. In the bad old days, you would either have to go to him personally and lay out all the evidence and shatter him, shatter his hopes, shatter his dreams, knock the scales from his eyes. But today you can create an anonymous email account and just start sending him all of these documents, and he doesn't know where they're coming from or from whom. And sometimes that's the right option, because somebody who's a pathological liar and a fraud with a string of lawsuits behind them may not take too kindly to the intervention of their boyfriend or Mark's friends and may retaliate against you, that there are risks here for you potentially. And it would be understandable if you did this at a remove, if you did this anonymously, tried to break through to your friend. If you don't fear this guy, if you think he's just an inept, lying, pot-smoking, video game playing clown, then just go to your friend and lay it all out. Say, have to tell you this. Love blinds. We've all been there. So not saying you're an idiot for not seeing through this guy, but because we're not sucking his dick, it was easier for us to see through him. And that's why you have friends in your life who aren't sucking your boyfriend's cock at the same time you are, so that if you're blinded by the video games and the pot smoking and the lies, that there are people around you who can pull you up short. And we are those people because we love you. That's what I would do if I were you. And I say that as someone who once, a million years ago, dated a pathological liar and was taken in because I was so besotted. Unfortunately, none of my friends knew the guy. So, because, when you're a closeted gay teenager, you're not really introducing your boyfriend to your friends, particularly your much older boyfriend to your friends. So I didn't have that check. I didn't have those outside eyes. I didn't have those non-besotted, non-love blinded, non-sucking the dick of eyes. Your friend does. Your eyes, your wife's eyes. Go to him. If it's safe, go to him, lay it all out. If it's not safe, if you're really worried about this guy, if you've looked up these lawsuits and he's potentially violent or retaliatory and just drags people to court and files nuisance lawsuits when he's mad at them, that's what Gmail accounts are for. Going to the post office is so old school. It's such a hassle taking trips there That's why over 600,000 small businesses are already using Stamps.com to get postage right from their desks wherever they need it 24 hours a day. Stamps.com turns your computer and printer into a virtual post office. You can buy and print official U.S. postage for any letter or package. Stamps.com is the better way to do your mailing and shipping. It's so easy to use and really convenient, and it lets you focus your time where you want on growing your business instead of on time-consuming trips to the post office. No wonder $2.6 billion in postage was printed just last year alone using Stamps.com. Right now, sign up for Stamps.com and use my last name, Savage, for this special offer, a 4-week trial plus $110 bonus offer, which includes postage and a digital scale. Don't wait. Go to Stamps.com, and before you do anything else, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage and type in Savage. That's Stamps.com, click the mic, enter Savage.
Hi, Dan. I have a question for you. It's a little bit out there, but I love your show and I trust you, so I feel like you're the guy to ask. So recently I kind of came to the realization that when I'm having sex or if my boyfriend is going down on me and I think of one of my siblings, it makes it really easy for me to come. Not that I would ever want to have sex with a sibling. I've never felt that way. I've never had that desire, but I kind of realized what it stems from. Basically, when I was young, maybe 8, I was masturbating and my sibling actually walked in on me doing it. He kind of, joked about it and told my mom, and we kind of, it was kind of a running joke, but at that time it was very shameful. I felt really embarrassed, and I just never forgot that moment. It's been seared into my brain forever. But yeah, so I'm wondering, is this something that happens, a really terrible moment that could affect my kink or my sexual desires? I find myself looking at incest porn. That's something that I think is hot, but I don't want to fuck my sibling at all. I'm very happily with my boyfriend, and that's not an issue, but I'm wondering, is this healthy? Is this something that I should just put away, push it out of my mind and avoid at all costs? I've never told anyone. I don't plan on telling anyone. It's something that's very personal, but it definitely does help, no matter what. Even if I'm pretty turned on, as soon as I think of that sibling, it's instantaneous. I don't know why, but I'm wondering, is this normal? What should I do about it?
We polled the room here at Savage Love HQ, and no one else has this fantasy or this go-to place when they're trying to get to that point of orgasmic inevitability. So based on our small sample size with this study, is it normal? No, it's not normal. Is it unhealthy is a different kind of question. I don't know. Does it make you super sad? Does it leave you devastated? Does it negatively impact your ability to function, work, love your boyfriend? Has it harmed you in any way? I don't think it has. It's just this go-to spot, this taboo, forbidden fantasy that makes your blood pump straight into your clit. And what do you do with that? I don't know what you do with that. And there are other people out there with incest fetishes who describe them the exact same way that you describe them. That they sometimes look at incest porn, but they're not attracted to any of their actual relatives. That it's this hypothetical, taboo, naughty, transgressive thing that just their brain snapped onto at some point. And some people have an event in their life that they can point to, like yours, where your brother walked in on you masturbating and then went and told your mother and you were mocked for this and probably experienced conflicting emotions around shame and power and control. Because really your brother was shaming you, and I'm sure he was masturbating constantly, but because you had never walked in on him, you weren't able to embarrass and humiliate him and involve your parents in it. This family dynamic around shaming you about masturbation, yeah, that could leave a dent, and apparently it has. Now, you could fight this for the rest of your life. You can keep this as a private secret place, a little secret garden that only you ever enter. You can fight it the rest of your life, try to push it out of your head. But I don't think that's very effective. And I've never really heard from anyone who successfully could do that without doing what I like to call the replacement. Don't fight it, replace it. Because when you think about what's going on in your head erotically, when you think about this erotic script, it's not so much wrong. It's not a wrong-ism so much as it's a wrong-gasm that you're having. That this taboo thing, this transgressive thing, this thing that you're not allowed or not supposed to think about or find sexy, when you think about it, give yourself permission to just throw yourself into it, that works for you. That sends you over the falls. That pushes you over the edge. That drags you to the point of orgasmic inevitability and hurls you off it. You may rely on this all your life. This may be that thing where you go all your life. Or if you can think of something that is comparably wrong, that doesn't involve your family, that works for you on the same sort of level around power and exposure and degradation and humiliation and transgressiveness, some other fantasy that you can cultivate, and I'm not sure what that would be exactly, that fantasy could grow and supplant this one and become your go-to. Again, I can't assign you a fantasy. I can't tell you, think about this. Maybe this will do it. But you can get online. You can read a lot of pornography, read a lot of erotica, read a lot of dirty stories written by women for women. You can cast a wide net and see if something else doesn't just click once you're exposed to it, once you find it, once you masturbate about it once or twice. That's a long-term plan to maybe replace this, to supplant it, this particular go-to fantasy. But in the meantime, I don't see the harm in you privately going there between your ears when you choose to, when you want to, when you need to. I don't think it's necessarily unhealthy. You've been doing it for a long time. You've never made a lunge at your brother, and you never will, based on the experiences of most people with these kinds of figurative incest fantasies. You don't have literal incest fantasies about your brother. You don't want to fuck your brother. But there's something about dragging him in to your orgasm, the way he inserted himself into your orgasm so many years ago, interrupted your orgasm. That does it for you. Sounds like you had a shitty brother, actually, growing up. Sounds like you had a shitty, sex-shamey brother. Even if they thought they were being fun and sex-positive by just being chitty-chatty, humorous about it, and kind of a shitty, perhaps unintentionally sex-shamey mother, at least you got something out of it in the end. You got a button that you can push for the rest of your life that gets you to a place that a lot of women have trouble getting to. So there's an upside. Ugh, enjoy.
Hi, Dan, and all of the podcast creators. So I have kind of a difficult situation where my dad has dementia. We didn't realize until the beginning of this month when he was hospitalized suddenly for just like very strange behavior, and then within the course of 4 days declined very rapidly. He has a type of dementia where he can't control his actions, and now he's a compulsive masturbator. And it's really challenging to support my mom through all of this while she tries to get control over his assets and just sort of get their life in order. But I'm really struggling with how to make a connection with my partner sexually who has a penis and not think about my father who is constantly touching his own. It's really sad, but also funny, and it's just, there's a lot of mixed emotions there, and I really love my boyfriend a lot, but I really want to be able to have sex with him eventually, but I don't know how to deal with this situation. I was hoping maybe you would have some insight. It's so frustrating because I'm also really, really horny, but then I'm like thinking about my dad. It's weird. It's really, really, really weird.
I'm not going to shrink you. I'm not going to crawl into your head. I'm just going to give you a couple of practical suggestions on how you can ease yourself back down onto your boyfriend's dick. Number one, remind yourself, actually, I'm going to crawl into your head for a second. There are lots of guys out there, creepy guys who've been doing creepy things with their penises the whole time you've been alive, and for millennia before, and there will be for eons after. I'm not saying your dad is a creep. Dementia is a tragedy, and I'm sorry for your dad, but it's creepy what you saw. Your dad masturbating and pulling his dick out and unable to stop touching yourself. Kind of squeaked you out. Understandable. But to leap from my dad is doing creepy things with his penis now because of this dementia, because of this tragedy, which is then stirred together with your grief and sadness, and you're associating the sight of his penis perhaps with grief and sadness and loss, and then to dump all that in your boyfriend's lap onto his dick, that his dick is suddenly creepy and sad and symbolizes loss and tragedy too. It's a little unfair to your boyfriend and his penis, but the saving grace here is that you are horny. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to have sex with your boyfriend with his consent, and you're going to roll this out a few times, a half a dozen times, without him taking his pants off. No penis involved. You're going to have oral sex. You're going to use toys, mutual masturbation, and he's going to do this for you. He's going to indulge you. You are going to then reassociate his presence between your legs with pleasure and orgasms and intimacy without his penis coming into play, with his permission. Hopefully he'll be game for this. Hopefully it'll be fun for him. And then he can run off to the bathroom and pull out his dick and jack off or whatever he needs to. He can take care of himself a few times without coming himself and without dragging his dick out. Then the 7th time you guys are going to mess around, you do everything that you've been doing. He leaves his pants on for a while. He eats your pussy. You guys use toys or roll around, hands. And then you put on a blindfold and he takes out his dick and you incorporate it back into your sex play, back into your body without having to look at it. And you form new associations, new connections, and you begin hopefully to see his penis as pleasure and life and a future and gain as opposed to loss and triumph as opposed to tragedy. And you carve a new groove into yourself. And then you keep using the blindfold until you can take off those training wheels, which is really what they kind of are. The blindfold's there to help you slowly reacclimate to all the good things penis represents or used to represent in your life, as opposed to the sad and tragic things penis began to represent to you and in your life after what you saw your dad doing with his as a result of this tragedy that has befallen your father and your family. My sympathies.
Hey, Dan. I'm a straight guy in the East Coast, and I'm in this group chat with my 3 best friends from high school, and one of them is always sending us pictures of his shit, and he's making a lot of fart jokes and poop jokes, and we all kind of engage in it. We always do that for fun, and it's funny. But then sometimes we'll talk about our sexual experiences, and this one friend hasn't had quite as much sexual experience as the rest of us, and 2 of us will talk about eating ass or, tossing the salad or whatever, just as kind of like something that we've done. But the one friend who's always sending pictures of his shit and talking about his shit and basically things out of his asshole, he'll like recoil in disgust. He'll always kind of say, but that's where shit comes from. Like, how could you put your mouth where there's shit coming out of? And we try to explain to him, like, oh, you kind of forget about it in the moment. It's not that gross. Human bodies, during sex, it's just like you take it all in, you forget about it. And we try to get him to be more comfortable with his body because we have a feeling he's a little uncomfortable with his body because he sees his body as just like a place where awful things come out of. So is there anything that we could say to him that might get him to accept this, or do you think it's just a lost cause?
You could, I suppose, tell your friend that you don't eat ass when there's shit coming out of it for the same reason you don't cross streets when there are cars coming down them. But why? Why are you in a regular chat session with someone who sends you pictures of his shit and talks about his shit? I don't think eating ass is disgusting. I don't think what you guys are doing is disgusting. What he does is disgusting. Sending pictures of his poop to 3 friends from high school? Ugh. I don't want to work on him. I want to work on you. Why are you still in contact with this person? It would only take one picture of one turd for me to block somebody. However well I know them or knew them, whatever good times we shared in high school, that would kind of be it. So why are you so invested in your relationship with this person that seems to consist primarily of him sending you pictures of his turds and then him sex shaming you about the gross and disgusting things you do? Let it go. Ignore him. Who cares if the gross shit pick sharer thinks that it's disgusting of you to put your tongue in some woman's hole? To hell with him. Both are holes. To hell with him. Never going from back to front, of course. To hell with him. Ugh.
Hi. First, I want to say that I'm a weekly listener, and I love your show and everything that you and the tech-savvy at-risk youth do. Having said that, I have an issue with the way and the advice you gave the black man who called in for episode 500. Namely, my issues with the phrase racist or not. The situation that this man described was racist, no question about it. And as a listener who happens to be black, it kind of disappointed me to hear you say racist or not. I also feel like with this incident that so deeply affected the caller, it would have helped to have a black person answer this because, again, as a black man, it helps me to get advice from another person of color who has the same experience when it comes to racial situations.
Hi, Dan. I also am a black man and experienced a similar situation in my 20s. I take a little issue with you characterizing his experience as victimization. Yes, I understand the first time this was dropped in his lap, it could have been shocking, but he did willingly continue this interaction with other folks. Now, we all know that people enjoy what is forbidden. He can take solace in two things. Either A, he provided non-racist people with an outlet for fantasies that would be very taboo in this politically correct world. Or B, he helped to straighten out people that were truly racist by giving them the black dick that they so abhor.
Hi, Dan and the tech-savvy at-risk youth. This is a response to the caller, the gentleman who was an escort and had white women and men in cuckolding relationships call him nigger and talk about his nigger dick. I wanted him to know that that is something that happens all the time. Being raised in the rural South, I was as well. You are instilled with this fear as a black person from your parents about what white people can do. Our parents saw firsthand the terrible things that white people did to their parents and their aunts and uncles, and the racialized sexism that occurs in the South is, so common. When I was 16, I had a group of 40-year-old white men chase me off a street, throwing rocks at me and telling me that if I was lucky, they'd lay me down and put a white baby in me. And, again, when I was 20, had a guy whisper in my ear during intercourse that he was going to make me his slave mistress like in the good old days. And it's something that white people in the South kind of think is okay, but is absolutely not. And the way you cope with that is by raising fearless black children who don't have this. So if they are unlucky enough to experience this racialized sexism, one day they'll have enough courage to jump up and say that is not okay and get themselves out of the situation instead of what happened to, us, where we have that fear that anything could happen if we don't abide. Dan was right. It's something that happened to you, and it's something that happens to a lot of us. So hopefully it gets better, and hopefully those fearless children are so much better off by having you as a dad.
And we're going to leave it there. 206-302-2064 is the number here at the Savage Lovecast. If you want to record a question or a comment, we love your comments. For a future show, give us a buzz, 206-302-2064. If you are listening to the version of the Savage Lovecast with ads, there is a longer ad-free version of the Savage Lovecast that you can subscribe to at www.savagelovecast.com. That is where you find the Magnum Edition with more guests, more calls, no ads. SavageLovecast.com. fakedansavage.com. Follow me on Twitter at FakeDanSavage. Follow Emily Bazelon on Twitter at Emily Bazelon. Follow Mistress Matisse on Twitter at Mistress Matisse. And quickly, before we wrap up this week's show, an email from a listener. Hey Dan, I love your podcast. I would suggest you stop referring to the tech-savvy at-risk youth as such, however, as it's a stigmatizing term that labels them in an unfavorable way. I'd call them tech-savvy opportunity youth. Just a thought. Thanks, Julia. Thank you, Julia, for sharing that thought. We are taking it under advisement. The Savage Lovecast is produced every week by Nancy Hartunian and me and Nancy and the tech-savvy at-risk youth. We will all be back at you next week with another installment of the Savage Lovecast. Thanks